Hello and welcome back to another lecture on semantics. Now in our previous lecture, we discussed sense relations. In particular, we discussed homonymy and polysemy, we discussed semantic similarity, and semantic opposition. Now we move on to the fourth type, which is hierarchical relations. Now in all of the previous types of sense relations, none of them had a hierarchy. If you don't know what hierarchy means, basically you can think of it like this. Picture in a university. A university has at its head the president of the university. Below the president you might have deans of faculties. Below each faculty you might have heads of departments. This structure in general is called a hierarchy. So what hierarchical relations exist when it comes to senses? Well, there are actually 6 types we're going to talk about. Let's list them here. The first one is a taxonomy. The second is a hyponymy. The third type is a lexicalized taxonomy or hierarchy. The fourth type is a part-whole relation, or we can call it meronymy. The fifth type is a member-collection relation, and the final type is a portion-mass relation. So let's begin. A taxonomy is by far the simplest one to understand. Basically, a taxonomy is a hierarchical relation that we impose out of nowhere. So really, the normal state is a continuum, and we impose some kind of taxonomic relation on there just to make them kind of easier to understand. In our last e-lecture, we ended with a quick question. Where do color terms go? They don't seem to fit into homonymy or polysemy, or into semantic similarity or opposition. Colors are really viewed as a continuum. So you might start with dark colors and end up with the light colors. So black, purple, blue, green, orange, yellow, and white. So in essence, these are a continuum. But sometimes in talking about colors, we like to put things in some kind of structure just to make them easier to remember. This is what we call a taxonomy. In a taxonomy, all of the elements that we mention on the bottom level are all on the same level. We call them sisters or taxonomic sisters. Now we move on to discuss hyponymy. A hyponymy is also another type of a hierarchical relation. But unlike a taxonomy, instead of being horizontal, it's actually vertical. So recall in our taxonomy, everything is horizontal. They're all on the same level. But in a hyponymy, things are vertical. For example, let's take a canary and a penguin. What do these two have in common? Well, they're both part of a category we call birds. So a canary is a bird. A penguin is also a bird. But what is a bird? A bird is an animal. Other type of animal might be a mammal. So if you notice, unlike a taxonomy, which was horizontal, our hyponymy is vertical. We say a canary is a bird. A bird is an animal or an animal. So let's talk a bit about the characteristics of a hyponymy. Number 1, let's discuss the levels of conceptual representation. The way this goes is, if y is x, then x is the superordinate or the hypernym of y. Now y in this case, or the bottom level, would be called the subordinate or the hyponym. And that's where the word hyponym comes to be. So let's see some applications. A canary is a bird. So bird is the top superordinate level or the hypernym. Canary is the subordinate level or the hyponym. In fact, Roche and others suggest a 3-level system, which looks something like this. Canary is a bird, and a bird is an animal. Now Roche suggests that the level that we usually think of is this middle level. So this level is called the basic level. The more specific one is called the subordinate level, and this is the superordinate level. So when it comes to the characteristics of a hyponymy, we just discussed the first part, which were the conceptual levels. Second characteristic of a hyponymy is called inclusion, and the third is called transitivity. Let's talk about inclusion. Now, inclusion basically states that if Y is a hyponym, meaning the subordinate level, okay, the bottom level. If Y is a hyponym of X, then Y contains the meaning or the properties of X plus something or some things that are extra. Let's see how that plays out. Let's call canary here a Y. Let's call the bird an X. If Y is a hyponym of X, like Y is here, Y is a hyponym of X, then Y should contain the meaning of X or the properties of X plus something extra. So, the properties of a bird is that it has wings, it flies, it lays eggs. So a canary likewise should fly, should have wings, should lay eggs. But on top of that, it should add something extra that is not present in the general description of bird. So we might say that a canary sings, but not all birds sing. So that is an explanation of the property of inclusion. The last characteristic of a hyponymy is transitivity, which basically states if X is a Y and Y is a Z, then X is a Z. Let's see how that plays out. Let's call this canary an X, bird a Y, and the animal a Z. If X is a Y, so if the canary is a bird, and Y is a Z, so we know that the bird is an animal, then necessarily X is Z as well. So canary is an animal. So now we've covered three properties or characteristics of a hyponymy. We talked about the conceptual levels, we talked about the fact that there is inclusion, and that there is transitivity.